It was a sweltering August afternoon in 1864, and the Virginia air hung thick with dust and dread. Just outside the city of Petersburg, a group of exhausted Union soldiers from the 32nd Infantry had pitched camp beneath a canopy of ancient oaks. The war had dragged on for over 3 bloody years, and the men's bodies wore the evidence. Uniforms were tattered, boots were soaked through with mud and sweat, and faces had become hardened into unreadable masks. In the lull between skirmishes, their camp momentarily resembled something close to peace fires crackled low. A few men shared stories while others chewed stale hardtack, as if it might soften if they just believed hard enough. Into this moment of quiet stepped a visiting war photographer named Daniel Rohr, a wiry man with a permanent scowl etched across his sun-weathered face and a massive wooden camera that looked more like a coffin than a tool of art. Rohr had one. Glass plate left and saw in these men not just subjects, but a moment worth preserving. He called to them, asking for 10 minutes to make them immortal. The soldiers moved slowly, with the kind of weariness that could no longer be disguised, brushing dirt from their sleeves, adjusting their posture, leaning on rifles like crutches. There were no smiles of pride, only resignation. This photograph, they knew, was not for them. It was for the women who waited with dread at home, for children who might never remember the lines of their fathers' faces. They posed, stiff and silent, unaware that this frozen image of camaraderie would, decades later, become something far more haunting. Among the soldiers that day stood Caleb Morgan. Barely 18 and still carrying the rigid idealism of a boy who hadn't yet seen too much, he had arrived only 2 weeks earlier, a replacement after his older brothers. Daniel and Eli had been killed in the brutal spring push near Cold Harbor. Caleb didn't speak of them much, but you could see their memory in the way he folded his blanket just so, or in how he lingered behind the older men during drills. Always respectful, never quite one of them. As the camera was being set up, Lieutenant Amos Riacan, old veteran with a scar running from his chin to his ear, like a lightning bolt, pointed at Caleb and rasped, "You best look brave, son. This photo's forever." That earned a few half-laughs, but they were short-lived. Caleb managed a small smile, then let it slip away. He stood near the back, resting a hand on his canteen, the other clenched behind his back. Rohr adjusted the lens, counted down, and the men fell into stillness. In that breathless pause, time seemed to stretch and contract at once. The shutter clicked. Just like that, the moment was captured. No one noticed the slight disturbance in the trees behind them. No one thought twice about the shape obscured by leaves, too still to be natural, too quiet to be one of their own. Within days, nearly half the men in that photo would lie dead or dying along an ambushed trail they weren't supposed to be on, and something had already been watching. The photograph, preserved on a single fragile glass plate, was never developed during the war. After the siege of Petersburg, Daniel Rohr packed up his equipment and returned to upstate New York, where he opened a modest portrait studio, stored his wartime negatives in a trunk, tied with twine and forgotten in a dusty attic. After his death in 1902, most of the plates were lost to fire, mold, and neglect, fragments of history reduced to ash and memory. But one plate survived. Not by design, but by luck. It passed through several hands antique collectors' estate, liquidators, Civil War hobbyists, until it ended up in a tobacco tin, wrapped in an old flannel shirt and stuffed at the back of a cedar chest. There it remained until 2023, when a retired antique dealer named Marvin Wilcox stumbled upon it while clearing out his late uncle's farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania. Wilcox didn't think much of it. The auction listing was humble: glass, negative, likely Civil War, unmarked. It was placed alongside bayonets, buttons, and brass belt buckles. But one image in the online preview caught the attention of Dr. Lauren Hensley, a senior archivist at the National Military Archives, who had been conducting a search for rare, uncatalogued military photographs. Something about the composition struck her, the weariness in the soldier's eyes, the sense of unity that hung heavy in the frame, the breath between battles. It wasn't the usual heroic portrait. It was something quieter. Something real. She purchased it immediately. Unaware that she had just opened a door history had kept shut for over a century at the archives. The restoration team began its work with reverent caution. The glass plate was cleaned, scanned, and digitized using AI-powered enhancement tools that could balance contrast, remove surface scratches, and even extrapolate detail from shadow. Initially, the process was routine. The system began identifying soldiers based on facial structure, unit insignia, and uniform patterns. Cross-referencing enlistment records and military rosters, the software confirmed the presence of several men from the 32nd Infantry. Caleb Morgan's match came from an enlistment photo taken just weeks before the battle, his baby-faced features unmistakable despite the dirt and fatigue. As part of their museum project, Lauren's team aimed to create an interactive exhibit where visitors could learn the names, ranks, and stories of forgotten soldiers. It was meant to honor memory, to fill in the blanks left by time. But when the team began enhancing the background, a cluster of trees in the upper right quadrant, something unexpected emerged. Face pale, watching too focused to be accidental. Too defined to be a trick of light. The software froze, then produced a name. Elias Finch. The room went silent. The photo was no longer just a memento, it was evidence. Elias Finch was a ghost in military history, a name whispered in declassified documents, buried in footnotes and coded field reports. He was never formally arrested, never tried, never conclusively confirmed to exist, but his legend haunted the margins of Civil War scholarship, a Confederate sympathizer who posed as a Union scout, slipping between camps, altering maps, misdirecting troops, and then vanishing. The AI matched the man in the tree to a rare mugshot from 1863, an image stored in a little-known archive reserved for suspected infiltrators. The likeness was chilling, angular jaw, downturned mouth, eyes sharp enough to cut through fog. "Run it again," Lauren whispered. They did. Same result. This time no one laughed. Finch wasn't in uniform. He wasn't posing. He was watching. Just days before the 32nd Infantry was led into an ambush at Deep Bottom, this man had been in there. Camp, hiding in plain sight. The timeline clicked into place. Survivors had spoken of orders arriving from an unfamiliar courier. Maps had been swapped, directions changed, reports misaligned. They had been led to slaughter by information that came from within. The source had a face. As word of the discovery spread, the photograph became known as the Finch exposure, and it sent shockwaves through the historical community. Lauren coordinated with university departments, combing through dispatches, diaries, and battlefield orders from 1864. A pattern emerged. Every time Elias Finch appeared, sometimes as Edward Marsh, sometimes as Franklin Haley, and it fell into confusion. Cavalry was misrouted. Supply trains vanished. Communications broke down. But it wasn't just sabotage of logistics, it was psychological warfare. Thus, Finch infiltrated the fragile trust between commanders and their men. He passed as one of them, only to fracture them from within. In one chilling note, a Union lieutenant wrote, "He slipped away the night before. We trusted him. God help us. We trusted him." One soldier who survived the Deep Bottom ambush, Corporal Jeremy Holden, had written a letter to his mother never mailed, found decades later in a museum basement where he described a quiet man, always writing, always watching. No one had known his name, but now Lauren did. He had been there in that photo, unseen, for more than a century. His betrayal captured in silver nitrate and shadow. The museum scrapped its original plans. This was no longer just a portrait of brothers in arms. It was the visual confession of a saboteur. A new exhibit was created, titled Saboteur in the Frame. The restored image was placed in a temperature-controlled glass case, alongside an interactive timeline detailing Finch's suspected operations. Next to the display, visitors could view the AI match logs, field reports, and first-hand accounts that, together, told a story too strange to fictionalize. Historians who had studied Civil War espionage were stunned by the revelation. Elias Finch, long assumed to be rumor or wartime paranoia, was real. His face, once hidden among leaves, now stared back through time. He had not fired a gun yet. He had orchestrated more damage than most soldiers ever could. The soldiers of the 32nd, young, tired, unaware, had smiled at the camera, while death perched above them, silent and sure. The photo, meant to preserve a brotherhood, had become a snapshot of quiet betrayal. What makes it more haunting is this: Finch didn't vanish because he failed. He vanished because he succeeded. His betrayal left no fingerprints, only echoes. Till now. Let us know in the comments if you had discovered that shadowed figure. In the trees, would you have felt fear? Or awe? What would you have done with the truth? And if this kind of story chills your bones like it did ours, be sure to subscribe. We'll see you next time for more secrets history tried to bury until someone dared to zoom in.